is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm here for another episode of the Week's Wrap, where I break down the big headlines from this past week. The first one, of course, we're going to dive into the speculation of the returning of CM Punk. Then, of course, I'm going to talk about the big changes that are in store for NXT, and also the reasoning behind the pause button being placed on Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page, and why Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage has gotten the go. So without further ado, I am Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and let's hop into it. So the first thing we're going to hop into is, of course, what everyone has been talking about since he's left pro wrestling. It is the return of CM Punk. So it's been heavily speculated these past few weeks that CM Punk is going to be making a debut in AEW. And of course, the speculation only got heightened that the fact that AEW will be in Chicago, Illinois at the United Center, and with the, of course, special entitled for AEW Rampage as the first dance. And of course, Darby Allin making the dig at the best in the world, and also Kenny Omega wearing the Cookie Monster shirt, and of course, numerous other things that have been pointing toward the direction of him making his debut this week. Now, of course, when questioned about this whole thing, CM Punk, of course, talked about how that there was a planned event for the show that he's in with Stephen Amell that was created, Heels, which is, of course, a pro wrestling show that's been on Stars, and they plan on having a screening. And one of the dates was, of course, this Friday. Now, of course, he said nothing's concrete, but that's what it's looking like, is a go that he'll be busy in that time slot. Now, of course, this was an interview that he had on Sunday Night Main Event with Cultaholic. Now, when Tony Khan was asked about this similar topic on Busted Open Radio, his answer was he knows that everyone has an expectation for what is going to be happening on this week's episode, and hopes that the anticipation continues to go. Because, I mean, why not? I'm hoping that this turns out to be true. But AEW, if this ends up not happening, y'all are going to have some questions to be answered. Now, of course, there's another person that can be talked about within this, Bryan Danielson, aka Daniel Bryan. That's who CM Punk said could possibly be the one that shows up. And there's been speculation that Daniel Bryan has put pen to paper with All Elite Wrestling. But, all right, listen, what you're not finna do is come all the way to Chicago for Daniel Bryan to debut. What you need to do is put CM Punk on this daggone TV screen. Come on now. We all know what we want, and y'all all know what we want. Come on now, get the people what they want. Because when talked about this by, of course, the people who have worked with Punk during this Heels filming, they talked about how good CM Punk looks in the ring. One of them even talked about how it looked like CM Punk had never left the ring. Give us what we want. Come on now. Just give it to us. Now, another news report that's been coming out is the big changes that are in store for NXT. So after this week coming up with NXT TakeOver, we're planning on seeing a whole new set of changes for NXT, as it looks like Vince McMahon wants to go back to the roots of what NXT was started off to be, which was developmental. That was one of the big reasons why John Laurinaitis, Bruce Pritchard, and Vince McMahon were part in taking the hand of taking out a bunch of the cuts from the past couple weeks ago of NXT talent that, of course, shook up the whole wrestling industry, because no one was expecting the people that were released to be released. And of course, apparently, USA Network is not happy with any of these cuts, of course, because they're going back out to the competition, and on top of that, they were booked very prominently on the Black and Gold brand. And it looks like, of course, what Vince McMahon plans on doing is new lighting, new setups, and a whole new logo, and also going back to batch tapings. And the reasoning for going back to batch tapings is because of the fact that it's for budget cuts. It costs a lot of money to go live every single week, so they're planning on just filming them over a week or so throughout every other time period and then putting them out in periodic times like they used to do. And of course, everyone's talking about the cuts and all this, which heavily speculates Adam Cole leaving even more because of the fact that he's not exactly up there in age, but he's not what they're looking for. As they say that they're not looking for a person in their 30s or mid 30s anymore in the NXT brand. So hopefully this means that Adam Cole's getting called up, or this could mean that Adam Cole's not going to be a part of WWE anymore. So until we find out more about these even bigger changes, and of course the roles that each person is going to be playing in NXT, especially Vince McMahon, we'll be letting you guys know. Another thing to be noted on, of course, is the absence of Hangman Adam Page. We saw that Page and the Dark Order had a nice elimination tag match against the Elite and lost. And of course, what was on the line was the #1 contendership for the AEW Championship for Hangman Adam Page. And the stipulation was if he lost, then he had to get back to the back of the line. So of course, with all this happening, this put Christian Cage in the forefront and became the #1 contender for the AEW Championship at All Out. So what is the reasoning behind this? Why was the pause button put on? To be, of course, frankly honest with everyone, when this came from PW Insider, that the reasoning behind this was because Adam Page was scheduled for leave anyway. The reason being is because he's expecting his first child with his wife, and it only makes sense for him to be there as the father and be there to support his wife and be there for his newborn. So that is the reasoning why he is on paternal leave. Also, another big thing that happened this past weekend, at Triplemania, we saw Andrade El Idolo versus Kenny Omega in AAA, and this was all for the Mega World Championship. And of course, the match itself had enough hype behind it, but recently released from WWE, Mr. Ric Flair was in the corner of Andrade. And of course, this ended up being the case where he accompanied Andrade, and Charlotte was also in Mexico City. That was why she was not at the live events in Charlotte this past week for WWE. So it was nice to see Rick, especially with Charlotte's boyfriend, Mr. Andrade, and supporting him in Triplemania. That was pretty cool. So, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, those were the headlines this past week. And of course, I'll be back next week giving you guys the same scoop on the news and the behind the scenes of wrestling. I'm sorry if you guys are like noticing all of me tripping up on words just now. But that's what you guys are going to get. This is a news thing. This is for me to dive into the news and give my opinion. But until next time, I'm Kevin Jones, Disciples of Wrestling, and that was wrestling.